What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back for a new episode of Under the Radar. Yeah, I skipped last week, mainly because, well, apart from Midnight and Crowbar, there wasn't a whole lot I could have talked about last week, so I decided to skip last week, and this week, we got quite a few albums to briefly talk about, and we're going to be seeing a little bit of like the sameness of like death metal, black metal, thrash metal. Basically, extreme metal blender is what we got for this week. So, all four of these albums I listened to today, and, well, the day of recording this, which is March 14th, whereas this video is coming out March 15th. But without further ado, let's talk about these. So I'm going to start off with the first one, which is Cryptworm with Spewing, Mephitic, Putridity. I'm not going to do that take again because this is the second time recording this and I don't want to do another take. So Spewing, Mephitic, Putridity by Cryptworms. So yeah, this is the debut studio release from this band, which is a death metal band out of England. And I saw Necrotic Nick review this album on Thralls of Metal, over at the Thralls of Metal, and I thought, after hearing how he described it with its gross, disgusting sound and some of the old school death metal influence, I was like, you know what? I'm going to check it out for myself. I mean, I think I had it listed before Nick did the review. I could be wrong. I could have just added it in there. I just don't remember. But regardless, I'm going to talk about it. So yeah, listening to this album, it's barely over a half hour, so it's a fairly easy listen, or a quick listen for the most part. And thankfully, it didn't sound like it dragged on really at all. Like, all the songs flowed well together, and there was a lot of different elements going on. Like, you got some doomy stuff, a little bit of kind of like breakdown-oriented stuff, and even some faster blast beat sections, some apocalyptic riffing that's obviously inspired by Incantation. Some of the doominess that you get on here kind of reminds me of, I hate to have to agree with Necrotic Nick, but it does remind me a bit of Autopsy, particularly Mental Funeral era Autopsy. There were some of the breakdowns on here definitely harkened back to Broken Hope for sure. While vocally, it is so putrid and disgusting sounding, it's kind of like almost like Demolich a little bit, like Annie Bowman kind of reincarnated into to the vocalist of this band, because it's got that low, almost like vomiting, burping style, which is really, I kind of like those vocals because it's just fun to hear how absurd some of these vocalists can get with their styles of vocal delivery in death metal. Musically speaking, it does kind of go all over the place, and sometimes it feels like the train's about to derail, and it's like one side's up, but the other side's still on the track, so it stays on the tracks just barely. Otherwise, it felt like, at times, it felt like the train was going to go off the tracks because of just the different changes they were trying to go for within this album. But despite the kind of inconsistent songwriting I felt like on here, I felt like top to bottom, it was a fun, enjoyable album. I give it an 8 out of 10. Solid debut from Cryptworm, despite, like I said, the inconsistent songwriting where they just hop from one subsect of death metal to another, and it just didn't feel like it kind of meshed well at times. Though the flow of the album was pretty well done. It's just, whenever it's like 1 minute they go from a death doom section to a breakdown and then to some blast beats and some apocalyptic riffing, it's like, ooh, bing, bang, boom, we're doing this now, try to keep up. But still, it's a really good album. I definitely look forward to hearing what this band has in store for a future release. But yeah, 8 out of 10 for Cryptworm's debut. The next album I'm going to be talking about, we're now going to get into a little bit of blackened feels. First, we're talking Bastard and their album Rotten Blood. So yeah, this is a blackened thrash band. I forgot what country they're from. Live check on Metallum, because even me, who does his research for these videos, even forgets at times. They're actually from Missouri. Okay, I thought they were from the States. And this is actually their second album, so they've been going for a little bit. Granted, this is their first album in 7 years. Their first one came out in 2015. now we got their second album, and this is my first time checking out this band, and I have to say, Black and Thrash, I'm really enjoying what I've been hearing out of Black and Thrash as of late, you know, like with Hell Ripper and even other albums that came out this year, like Beholder, for example, kind of having that Black and Thrash vibe going for it. Here with Bastard, it definitely carries a thrash vibe with little bits of like Midnight and Hell Ripper, kind of bringing in a little bit of that Motorhead and Venom energy, but a little bit faster than Midnight. I would say this is almost like the perfect companion to Hell Ripper to some degree, because they have a good balance, both bands, of like blackened speed and blackened thrash and a little bit of classic metal flair added in on top. Whereas Bastard here with their second album, Rotten Blood, I enjoyed it for the most part because it has that like that party vibe, that energy that I love about Black and Thrash. Granted, not as good in my opinion as a band like Hell Ripper or even Midnight, but it doesn't have to be. They can do what they want to do and I'm still going to enjoy it. There are some cool Motorhead riffs going on here. Some of that Venom worship even comes through. And even at times, I even got little hints of, like, first album of Bathory a little bit. But overall, this was a pretty solid one. 8.5 out of 10 for Rotten Blood by Bastard. So if you're a fan of Black and Thrash and you like to hear a little bit of that, like, beer-drinking party vibe, this will definitely be right up your alley for sure. Next album is from a band that I had never heard of until I saw them on Metallum, and that's Persecutory with Summoning the Lawless Legions. So yeah, this is the second album from this band, and I'm trying to remember again where they're from. They're from Turkey, so they're a Turkish black / death metal band. I'm not going to say they're like blackened death metal because it's more just a hybrid of black metal and death metal. It's like the vocals are very much black metal. You get a lot of black metal tremolo riffs, but you get some cool like death metal atonal riffs. Kind of like, this almost felt like a mix of black metal era Bathory and Immolation to some extent, because a lot of these atonal riffs that I was hearing throughout this album definitely harken back to something like Immolation. Even some more apocalyptic riffing, kind of incantation inspired. So it's like this, they were trying to go for like a mashup, so to speak, and even some Dark Throne like grooves even kind of come in here from time to time whenever I was listening to this album. So it's almost like as if Dark Throne and Bathory had a baby, Immolation and Incantation had a baby, and then those two babies met and fucked. This would be the band that they gave birth to, which is a weird kind of analogy I'm going for, but that's really kind of the vibe I got. There was a lot of, like I said, a lot of those Immolation atonal riffs, some of the Incantation apocalyptic riffs, some Dark Throne grooves, and some Bathory-inspired tremolo riffs. And it's just absolute chaos as well, and I felt like it was maybe just a tad too chaotic for me personally, but it's still really good album here. 8.5 out of 10 for this. I enjoyed this one. And it's only 5 songs because pretty much all these songs go between 7 and 8 minutes long. So they're pretty long songs, 5 tracks total. But it kind of did leave me wanting to hear more because of just how weird and brutal and evil it sounded. So yeah, very, very good stuff right here. 8.5 out of 10 for Persecutory's Summoning the Lawless Legions. Which brings us to the final one on this episode, and that is the debut album from Belgian death thrash band Schizophrenia with Recollections of the Insane. So I didn't have much expectation going into this because this is my first time listening to this band, and seeing that this was a debut, I was like, you know what? This has the potential to be something cool. And holy shit, I was not ready for how fantastic their brand of death thrash was. Granted, it's a little more thrash than death metal. You do get some death metal blast beats, and the vocals kind of sit in between death metal and thrash metal. It's not like we got a death metal vocalist going on here. It's kind of sits in between both. Almost a bit of like a more gritty version of like Max Cavalera to some extent. And maybe even a little Tom Angel Ripper from Sodom kind of thrown into the mix. Musically, though, I got so many hints of so many bands on here. Like, there was some Slayer vibes I heard, some Evil, some Sodom, Demolition Hammer, I even got a little bit of that. And even at times, like, especially towards the end of the album, on a couple of tracks, you get a little more technical soloing going on that, honestly, when I heard, I forgot what the song was, but there was a tapping solo going on, and it kind of sounded like Obscura a little bit. Like, I was like, were they trying to channel their inner Obscura on some of the lead work on this album? Because the lead work on this album is filled with a lot of shred, but I love the energy, the heaviness of the music, and I even really like the production on here. It sounds modern, but it still sounds a little raw. And then again, this is a debut, and I thought, like, especially the guitar tone kind of reminded me of the new Evil album, Hell Unleashed. Like, I really like the guitar tone on this album. The vocals are just absolutely insane on here. The bass is quite prominent in the mix. The drums, the snare could have been kicked up just a tad bit more. But aside from that, top to bottom, this is another Album of the Year contender. I'm giving this a 10 out of 10, guys. If you're a fan of death thrash, or at least thrash metal with some death metal moments, and that like middle ground in the vocals, you are going to love this. I really love this album. I actually might pick this one up here relatively soon, because holy shit, thrash, so far this year, whether it's blackened thrash, death thrash, or standard thrash, so far thrash has been really coming out swinging this year, whereas last year thrash was kind of quiet for the most part. Apart from Evil, Enforced, Nervosa, and Exodus, didn't really catch a whole lot of thrash last year, whereas this year we're getting a lot of thrash, whether it's in the fusion style or in the traditional sense. We're getting some pretty good, fucking good thrash, and this is definitely among the top of the list so far. Kind of neck and neck now with Vicious Knights, Allegion, Wilderun, and Amorphous for me. So this is an awesome album. Kudos to you, Schizophrenia, for making a debut that sounded amazing. But what did you guys think of all these albums I brought up for this week on Under the Radar? Let me know in the comments section below. And until next time, horns high, and I will see you soon.
Yeah, so music, I think it was just kind of hearing like my parents listen to like just whatever they were listening to around the house, and like flipping through the music channels on TV. I'm not sure if you had what it was like in the US and things, but in the UK we had like a few channels like Kerrang, Scuzz, things like that, which would play your kind of anything kind of mainstream at the time, if you could say so. Like you would get Slipknot, System of a Down,
yes,
and loads of like Sum 41, Linkin Park, and all that kind of stuff.